Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to have everyone on board, and I think that there are a couple of points of information that I want to get across in the office hour, and I also really want to hear from you all and some of the issues and things that you guys are thinking about in terms of education and workforce development. But I figured that I would start off today's session by way of an introduction for some of the folks that I haven't met before, and maybe just get people up to speed with my connection between ARIS and education and workforce development. So my name is Tom Tubon. I am in transition right now. I had a faculty position with Madison Area Technical College, and I run programs there for stem cells, regenerative medicine, and biotech. But in that capacity, I've also been a principal investigator on several NSF and advanced tech ed grants that are engaged specifically in the workforce development arena for engaging the biosciences, as well as just in general STEM and capacity for STEM. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to meet with Susan Reno and with Kevin Nimi, and they opened my eyes to the entirely new area of, well, new to me, of broader impacts and this idea of that space that exists between workforce development and broader impacts. So as part of that, I've been working with the ARIS Center for a number of years now. And the idea behind the work that I do there is in strategic partnerships for helping to identify that overlap between workforce development and broader impacts. And we'll hear a little bit more about that today. My current position behind me is the University of Minnesota, and I've just relocated to the University of Minnesota here in St. Paul. And I've taken an appointment here for the next several years as a Chief Workforce Development Officer for one of the manufacturing innovation institutes in synthetic biology. It's called BioMADE. So as part of my role there, one of my initial objectives is to really marry the two and use this institute as a platform to bring those ideas together in a way that has intentional and directed measures that we can account for broader impacts in workforce development. So that's a little bit of my background. We have our other co-office hour person here on the phone, and Dr. Brianne Peterson. So Bryanne, if you wouldn't mind giving an introduction, and we can just kind of maybe go around with a brief introduction for folks that are
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. As Tom said, I'm Brianne Peterson. I'm co-hosting the office hours with Tom. We found each other through ARIS and just fell in love with working together. We have so much in common. We both focus, of course, on broader impacts, but with a workforce development and broadening participation lens. I was a research assistant professor at Virginia Tech at the Center for Educational Networks and Impacts, and I focused on program evaluation and broadening participation research for STEM-based specifically programs, mostly K-12. And then I went on and did 2 fellowships that focus on post-secondary research. So community college and specific CTE coursework at the 2- and 4-year degree programs. My background, I was a CTE teacher, got into research through STEM education lens, was really focusing on the career and workforce development side of things within that sort of home. And right now I am, thanks to the pandemic, trying out some new things. So I have my own business called YNOTI Solutions, and I focus on helping others complete the research and continuing my work and broader impacts through this private organization. And I'm going to pass that on to the next person. Are we going to popcorn it? Is that the plan, Tom?
I think we popcorn it, but Brianne neglected to say one very important thing, and that she's also bringing to the discussion the perspective coming from military background and engaging our military personnel as well. It's one of the areas which I'm very passionate about, and Brianne has the experience and expertise to speak to the point of engaging our military. So Yeah, if you guys wouldn't mind doing just a brief introduction, just to get a good sense of where everyone's coming from. And Brianne, do you want to go down your list of people?
Sure. The
Do the
first
call out?
person I see and a name I recognize is Amy. Amy, do you want to kick us off?
Hey, I had to get myself unmuted. Yeah, hi, my name is Amy Patillo, and my colleague Matt Piesold is on with us. And he and I are from the University of Missouri Extension, and we work in labor and workforce development. And we specifically work probably in the same similar area as Tom with strategic partnerships and strategic engagement. Our objective is to connect and convene workforce actors across the state of Missouri. And we're most frequently working in the area of workforce development, economic development in urban and rural areas. But we also work in agriculture with workforce development. And one of the projects, speaking about the military that we have that is brand new, is Heroes to Hives. And so we're working with veterans to start entrepreneurial business ventures, and specifically working in beekeeping for this project. And then we also work with, sorry, the phone's ringing in the background. And we also work with a lot of partners on local and community-based workforce development. But thanks for inviting me, and I'm happy to join.
Amy, thanks for coming. I mean, I'm absolutely impressed and stoked that you're here to join us in this conversation.
Thanks, Tom. One thing I didn't, sorry, thanks, Tom. One thing that I didn't mention was that we recently started working with BioSTL in St. Louis in regards to some STEM education and focusing on high school youth. And so that's a brand new project that we're trying to work on. And I can see that there's a lot that I have to learn in that area from both of you.
Oh, I think Brianne might have frozen up there. We're going to continue going down our list. And I think that the next person that I see on my list is Courtney Price.
Hi, I'm Courtney Price. I'm with Ohio State University, and my positions are seated within two different plant science centers. And then I'm also a part of an interdisciplinary kind of grassroots group on campus called the STEAM Factory. And those roles I kind of, and many of the hats, one of the hats is to serve as the broader impact support person to faculty. And I joined today because I feel like of all of the criteria suggested by NSF, workforce development is probably where I'm weakest in knowing how to help a faculty craft something that would meet that audience. So.
Thanks, Courtney. And Matt?
Yes,
Matt.
hello. I'm Matt Piesold. I'm in labor and workforce development. I work closely with Amy Patillo on many of the projects as she alluded to. And so she just actually invited me because we were both interested in learning more about this initiative here. So we're new to this topic as well, but we've been working across the state, particularly since the pandemic, doing a lot of digital engagement. So that's something Amy didn't mention much. So in response to the pandemic last year, we moved a lot of our programming online, and we offered about 60 workforce webinars that helped address business concerns, whether COVID related or just things beyond COVID. So for example, we just got out of a webinar today that we hosted with our All Things Missouri, which are a data platform for sharing data and resources related to workforce across the entire state of Missouri. We featured a workshop. We had about 60 representatives from workforce development players and actors across the state that are learning about the resource tools that we have available, as well as trying to find ways to partner and engage at the community level, you know, in in-person format. So using that digital access to leverage in-person engagement opportunities. In addition to that, Amy and I work a lot on doing program evaluation and impact. So we've kind of moved into the ag space over the last year a lot, working on impacts for like mental health intervention programs and other NIFA grants that our other colleagues are working on. And then the other component I work a lot in is online education. So before the pandemic, I was working on a multi-campus asynchronous learning program where we were extending courses across the entire state of the 4-campus system here in the University of Missouri to increase access to economic and political science courses. So I teach through that initiative as well. And I'll turn it back over to whoever's next.
Thanks, Matt. You're bringing in, you all are bringing in so many different experiences between online learning and your interests and such. I can't wait till we just start sinking our teeth into some of the topics here today. So thank you for being here. I'm going to switch it on over to Stephanie Schroeder. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Schrader. And as of yesterday, I just started at the University of Minnesota also. So Tom, I'll actually connect with you at some point. And I will be I am the program manager for a new NSF Engineering Research Center. And part of my role will be to develop the engineering workforce development for students and postdocs. So I really am here to start, making connections and getting ideas.
Well, it is absolutely great to meet you. And I'm sure that we're going to talk a little bit more, a lot more actually in the time ahead. And I think that the remainder of our folks are our ARIS people. So our ARIS people, if you guys want to chime in and kind of do a really quick read around, it's good to see you all. I miss you guys. Megan, are you there?
Oh,
Sorry.
it's okay. I was just going to chime in and make it quick. I'm Sarah Vassmer. I'm at the University of Missouri too. So Amy and Matt, we need to find time to chat sometime. And I'm also here with ARIS. So looking forward to a great office hour.
Yeah, I'm Megan Heitman. I'm at Iowa State University, and I'm a part of ARIS and ARIS's training team. So we do a lot of institutional trainings as well as individual trainings and planning office hours such as this. I've done a few workforce development things with Tom and working with meeting people who work on ATEs and kind of helping make that connection with broader impacts. So that's been kind of a fun area of training for me.
I'd say fun is a great term. I'd say more challenging than anything. It's a very, very challenging area to break into.
Well, I
I'm glad that
attended
you're part of that
community
team.
college, and I started my career at community college, so it's got a soft place in my heart. So I'll work hard at that.
Thanks, Megan. Mike, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, I'm Mike Jacobson. I'm with Binghamton University at ARIS. Just looking forward to hearing some great ideas and getting a better sense of what workforce development is.
Awesome, Mike. And then back to our home base here, we have Jean, and I think Jean is going to round us up at the very end.
Hi, I'm Jean Bruns. I'm the website developer for ARIS, and I'm on a microphone challenge today, so I'm going to short.
Thanks, Jean. And we had another person just join us. Robert, would you mind doing an intro just to say hi? And
oh, yes. Hi. Sorry,
quick intro.
late joining. I'm from Binghamton University. I work in the same office as Mike there. Hey, Mike. Yeah, we work in research development, proposal, support, all of those kind of things.
Cool. Well, I think that we got everyone. I hope I didn't miss anyone, but if I did, please chime in. We want to make sure that everyone gets airtime to let us know where you're coming from and just a little bit about yourselves. Like I said, halfway through, and I'll say it again, it's such a wide scope of experience that people are bringing to this discussion. And so without further ado, I'm going to jump right into the discussion and see if we can get this office hour going. But I do want to start it off first by handing the torch over to you all to see what it is that are the most pressing issues on your mind. Not that we're going to be able to solve any of these in the time that we have together, but an awareness piece I think is really, really important when it comes to EWD and broader impacts. yeah, if you guys have anything that you want to make sure we at least somewhat mention, try to address and hit up during this time, I think it's a great time to mention that at this point. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to flood the waters here, and there's so much information and so many things that I want to learn from you all. So
Looks like we're gonna kick things off ourselves, Tom.
okay, so you know what? I think in my experience from teaching and being in this last year of COVID and converting to online, I used to get really sketched out when there was silence and big gaps in you know, just I don't know what to do with this online, right? And someone finally told me, and it sunk in, is that those moments of silence mean generally one of two things: either everyone's ready to go, and you know, we're just kind of like at the starting line, or everyone is just completely out of sorts and it's just have no idea where to turn to. So I'm gonna hope that the silence is due to the first one and we're ready to go. And I'm gonna go ahead and jump in and share some of my perspectives, being part of the workforce development arena for many years, and then I'll lean on you guys to maybe kick off some of the conversation too. So with ARIS and workforce development, we've placed a very, very strong emphasis on engaging persons of all diverse backgrounds in STEM fields and getting them, you know, to cross that bridge and think about workforce development, think about the jobs and opportunities, which opens up, you know, it's kind of like a rabbit hole thing. The further you probe into something, the further you dig that hole, or maybe the door's open, but you find yourself overwhelmed with the amount of information. For workforce development, in my experience with engaging the community, it's brought me into places where I never thought I would end up or thought I would be. In talking or in discussions with folks that are from our military, with folks from industry, with folks that represent such a variety of different parts of our community. But the bottom line is that at the end of the day, that conversation about workforce development is no different than conversations about engaging everyone else in the area of social impact. It's about building the networks. It's about building those partnerships. But in this case, we're looking at ways that we can maybe measure one of the outputs by job readiness, job attainment, job interest, career readiness. What kind of opportunities can we provide? And as a broader impact professional, how can we facilitate those types of things? So it's an interesting conversation to have. And most folks that I encounter that are in the workforce space, and maybe some of the folks can comment on this who are in the same position, agree with me or disagree with me. But many of the people who are in the workforce space don't intentionally view themselves or ourselves as broader impact professionals. So the first challenge is all about perception, right? What is our broader impact identity? So I borrow that from our colleague Julie up in Oregon, but that broader impact identity is one of the first steps in really synthesizing the ideas and perceptions of how we can better impact the workforce. So what do you guys think about that? Those of you guys who are in similar situations and you're looking at engaging folks for workforce, it's that perception that what we do as workforce is tied intimately in the broader impacts. It's inseparable in my opinion. What do you think, Brianne?
Well, I know from my perspective, one of the easiest things to measure is when you're talking about broadening participation is a comparison. People like to do pull the analytics on a workforce before an initiative started and then after and do a comparison, which I think is a really good thing. But what I found is that it's very superficial and it doesn't account often for the natural attrition of others. And so I found that I really prefer to look at it from an individual perspective and do more of a mixed methods inquiry when you're trying to measure that type of growth and change in a community, in an industry, at an individual organization. And so I think that that's something that I'm really thinking about a lot lately from a big organizational perspective, is how to really measure the inclusivity and address changes and measure changes from specific initiatives. So that's one thing that I would like to hear, how others are doing that and what it's looking like, you know, at your institutions and in the grants that you all are working on. Anyone have a story?
So I'll speak up. Matt and I have been working in this area quite a lot in the past 2 years. In extension, we are not strong in program evaluation. We do pre-post surveys. They're usually tied to the program area that we're working in. For example, Matt mentioned that we're currently working on mental health in farmers and ranchers. And that is a grant through USDA NIFA. And we quickly identified that the evaluation measures were not very strong. And in addition to doing a mixed method analysis or a mixed method approach, we're going to also do a comparative analysis. And there is a pre and post test for some of the mental health tools that they're using, that they're working across 8 different mental health modules or mental health programs that are used for a variety of different reasons. Like maybe some are targeted specifically at mental health first aid. One of them's more targeted at just an individual and taking care of you. Just a variety of different approaches. And it's very hard to identify where your greatest gains are coming from and what cost in personnel and services is applied to that so that it can be sustainable outside of grant programming. But getting back to the idea that we're doing a lot of local and community-based work. The University of Missouri Extension has a county engagement specialist in all 114 counties in Missouri, but we're not capturing those impacts. And so Matt and I have really been working on program evaluation to catch those broader impacts. And even as we had a discussion with our mental health first aid group yesterday, the tools that they're using do not capture the broader impacts. And so the only way for us to capture them is to do key informant interviews with the instructors, interviews with focus groups and participants to try to collect those, but they're not integrated into the work that Extension does.
So Amy, I appreciate the points that you brought up.
Example.
Yeah, that was awesome. Awesome.
So Amy, if I can ask a follow-up to that, you know, it sounds like you guys are really moving in the right direction and you're being intentional with how you're looking at things and what you're looking for. What do you think is your next step? What are you still missing? What do you want to see further improvement on?
Let me think for just a second.
I mean, the one thing that I can chime in, because Amy and I kind of moved into the space over the last year or two, is that, well, at least with an extension, a lot of times there's people who are very passionate and very good at delivering the programming, but they either don't have the capacity, a lot of times it's probably more capacity, or maybe the training to really do that evaluation on the backside. So I think one way to approach it at the institutional level, if you can develop the teams that work well together, you have people who deliver the programming and then you have those who evaluate the programming. And so that's kind of the niche that Amy and I are carving out here, is that we become the program evaluators and then we connect them to the data and the information that they need in order to convey their impact. But really to expect to have one specific team that can do all these things itself, you know, deliver the programming and the evaluation, might not be a realistic objective. And also, at least with some institutions, there's been so much turnover, people retiring, disruptions, things like that, that a lot of institutional capacity has been lost. So how do you reconstruct that sometimes from a relatively low level, or just the fact that one area, maybe there's a huge turnover. So the people who are maybe doing that evaluation of the past are no longer there. So how do you create kind of this multidisciplinary team that can create the impacts and the outcomes and deliver the programming engagement that you want. So I think that's what we're experimenting with right now. You know, we'll see how it goes, of course, but I think that's kind of how we're positioning ourselves, you know, for the next year or two at least. Did you have something you wanted to add, Amy?
Yeah, so the grant that I'm specifically referring to is the Farm and Ranch Stress and Anxiety Assistance Center, which is a group of 13 universities that are working together. And it's a 3-year grant that's been renewed for an additional 2 years. And what we've learned through the program evaluation piece is that the evaluation started with the submission of the grant, right? And when the funding was awarded. And so the submission of the grant wasn't submitted with the idea of evaluation in mind. So their evaluation measures that they wrote in aren't, I mean, sure, we can do it. We can say that you had a 20% improvement in any area, and that meets the needs of the grant and the funding agency, but it isn't ever providing quality, quantitative, qualitative information that actually shows the economic, educational, and health impacts that that grant has across 12 institutions. So the other thing that we ran into, which Matt has shared with you a bit, is that each of these universities' programs are much different. In some areas, they only have one person that's sitting in a research position that's trying to contract out to provide these services. So the manpower they have is very limited. And it's very hard to measure those impacts when we started off with a proposal submission that was weak. And what we find out is, as we work with these grant programs and with our colleagues, is that the proposals are generally very weak in their evaluations. And we're not doing a good job of assessing the impact of those. So for us, you asked what was our next step. We really want to hone our personal evaluation skills so that we can very quickly use the tools that are available to us to do a more robust evaluation.
I think that's an excellent goal and definitely fits a pattern, recurring pattern I've seen in the field. Show of hands, use your reaction tool for me. How many of you have thrown in an evaluation section to a grant proposal maybe in the last week of building out the grant? I mean, I'll raise my hand literally and digitally. Right? I think it's something that we're just now starting to have people in the field understand that it needs to be a priority in the planning process so that you can be intentional with your evaluation and know what you're looking for, know what your standards are, and know how to get there, and know what you're going to need in advance of starting to be able to produce that. Because it's so often an afterthought, which is what I'm hearing from you, Amy and Matt, in a lot of what you've been doing, is that it's sort of thrown in because it's seen as a requirement, but it's not really the focus. And I think that's something that Broader Impacts does really well, is it brings that back to the forefront and said, no, this needs to be your focus because we need to know if this is working on a broader scale. So I agree. I think that's such an important thing. And clearly it's something that's happening across. With that, I would say, is there someone else that maybe has another part of broader impacts outside of the evaluation spectrum that they wanted to bring light to as a potential growth area for our field?
So Brianne, I'm gonna make a comment here, and that is that despite having a really great evaluation, sometimes you're going to go into a grant, you have a great evaluation plan, maybe you've been working with a outstanding evaluator to help build in something from the very beginning. But then the major challenge there isn't necessarily that data, the questions and the format for the evaluation, but it is in engaging the principal investigators and the people who are working on the grant to integrate or intentionally go about the activities that are listed in the grant with the idea or the mindset for broader impacts, right? So it is kind of one of those things. It's a catch-22, like you said. a lot of people will submit these grants, and I'm guilty of it too, and they'll put these things in at the 11th hour. Intellectual merit is everyone's wheelhouse, you know, almost everyone's wheelhouse. You can write a dictionary about their topic of interest. But when it comes to broader impacts, when it comes to evaluation, those things for many people on the academic side of the house are still a little bit of a black box, right? That's the okay, well, you know, it's maybe the number of seats that we're going to impact. Maybe it's how many people we can bring into a workshop, but it's got to be a lot more intentional than that. That whole idea of what it is that we can engage the workforce community in ways that they're missing the point and they're missing the targets, and vice versa. I think that, you know, we had this summit for ARIS just this year, and the focus was on workforce development, and it was an incredible experience to see people from two different spheres of influence come together and have that common conversation. And it's nothing that on the books is brand new, but it's the way that you approach it and the angle that you're thinking about these topics that is. Change in perception is everything. So just you know, my 2 cents about that.
And in the comments, Tom, while you were talking, Sarah brought up budget, and that is absolutely something important and often, you know, the afterthought when it comes to evaluation. When I was at Virginia Tech, we always recommended people reserve 15% of the budget for evaluation, and often got laughed at by our colleagues and faculty members that we were trying to assist in the proposal writing process. You know, it's so hard to consider, you know, when the university takes 50% of your funding to pay to keep the lights on and for the support staff and things, to then give up another, in the researcher's mind, give up another 15% of the budget to go towards evaluation when so much of that money is already lost. It's a hard thing to swallow. And what I try and point out is that a lot of the time the evaluation can actually support the research, and that it should be a collaborative thing. We shouldn't be in silo. You do need an individual evaluator, in my opinion, outside of the research team, but there's nothing that says you can't share those nuggets and still turn that information into something useful for the community at large with the research team after you've done your due diligence as an outside party.
I've usually had and suggest when we do trainings on evaluations is to have an evaluator be a part of the team, right? So that they're in on the meetings as kind of an outside observer. But then it really makes the formative evaluation actually have some sort of impact, because they have a better understanding of the conversations that are going on and what you're really trying to accomplish and what questions you really want answered. So one thing that like we suggest, especially as part of the budget, and what I've done on grants that are largely, that are NSF grants that are largely educational or, BI focused, is put them on the team, make them a co-PI, have them have some salary money go to them, whether they use it for themselves or a grad student is generally up to them. But then they sit in the room and they observe, and you can still be in it. The thing that annoys me is the difference between internal versus external evaluator and all that. They're not doing the research, right? They're not evaluating what your research question is. They're evaluating the activities that you have around that, right? They're evaluating if your activities are actually being somewhat impactful, whether or not you're answering your research question at all. And so I think if we continue to, convey that message, especially to, the workforce development crew that doesn't necessarily have a great grasp on how to evaluate or what to evaluate, I think getting some of those evaluation experts in there can really help with that, because they come up with things that we don't even think of. And hey, why don't you try that? Or why don't you try this? And I think that's invaluable.
Yeah, that's really great advice, Megan, especially getting the evaluator in during the proposal time, helping them
Yeah.
be a part of the team when you're writing the proposal can not only make their job easier, but can really enhance the quality of the research that you're putting forth in the proposal.
Yeah, I'm going to say that for a lot of the NSF or the ATE grants, that evaluator piece is absolutely a requirement.
Mhm.
So I've been part of and worked with over like 10 NSF grants in the last 10 years, various capacities, and that evaluator piece is always built in. It's baked into the system. But the issue isn't that the evaluator piece. It's a connection between the evaluator and the rest of the team. Because usually the evaluator will come to a meeting, make observations, and put together a report, and that sense of engagement is lost. And I absolutely agree with you, Megan. I think that for something as important as, you know, trying to figure out if your actions are going to result in tangible jobs or whatever you're doing, that evaluator needs to be an integral part of the team. And so that's, I think, one of the things that we can, you know, I constantly suggest to colleagues who are writing these NSF grants. Like you said, like everyone said, bring the evaluators in early on, make sure that there's ample money to support the evaluation. And even at the cost of curtailing some of the activities, the evaluator is going to tell you whether the thing is a success or not. So, you know, you have to have some metric to show that there's an impact. Otherwise, it's all for naught. And this is one of the issues I think come into play with sustainability. You know, people do things because they say that I have it written down on paper, so I'll do it. But don't do things just to do things. Do things to produce something which is going to be sustained and valuable and other people can use. The only metric that I know that solidly speaks to that is the effort and input from an evaluator that really bakes into that part of the whole equation, the impact on society and broader impacts. So everything's kind of linked together. It's just no one intentionally looks at it that way. So I have a question for the folks that are on the line here, and it has to do with some of the engagement practices for EWD. You know, you're working on a grant that has an activity baked in there that you are going to engage industry members, or you're going to do things like professional development for some type of a you know, workshop that's related to workforce development. That activity, when people are designing those activities, the people that you bring to the discussion are probably, you know, going to be the most influential people in the whole mix here. So how do you guys identify who to bring to the table? Who do you identify in the community when you think about EWD, when you think about these activities? Who are your most important partners that help you to get your points across? Do you guys take advantage of case studies with students and student perspectives, industry validation for some of the activities? Or is it the educator who's coming in and saying, I don't have a background in this and I'm coming into this so I can develop something? I mean, who are the most important stakeholders that you guys engage in your activities? And what's your rationale behind that? You guys wouldn't mind?
Y'all thought you were coming to hear us talk, but we're professional question first.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, you go.
I was just gonna say,
Right.
I'd love to pitch in on that, but I think for us, it just depends so much on the individual and what the nature of their work is. Yeah, I have no no blanket answer for that, but I'm happy to listen to any other responses people have.
I'm going to reframe the question about those important partnerships and stakeholders. if you're like me, you probably have done something. You've done a lot of different things, and there's been really no measure of continuity in those relationships or impact. It's like, okay, great. I talked to an industry person and said they're interested and they're going to contribute. But in the long run, it's like the impact is minimal, right? But it's a great relationship. How do we turn those types of interactions and partnerships into very meaningful partnerships? How do we target the ones who are going to advocate for the cause and really make that needle move, make that needle jump? How do we identify those people? I think someone I was speaking to with very recently called them the candlelight people or something, the people that just you talk to them and they got it, the ideas come up and they're engaged and they know and they have things that they see need to be done. For the EWD space, people oftentimes are in their own bubble, in their own sphere of this is what I'm going to impact, that their change is meaningful in their context. I'd like to see meaningful context across the board, change in the meaningful context there. And that's hard. I mean, how do we find these candlelight people and who are they that are going to advocate for workforce development and broader impacts and change in society?
I can maybe just briefly speak to a little bit what we're doing here in Missouri. Some of the workforce webinars that I alluded to earlier, and that's really our opportunity to bring people together. In some ways, the pandemic allowed us to reach more people because now we're marketing across the entire state. And these pockets of people, or these candlelight holder people, are the ones who often show up at these events and these opportunities. And so finding a way to bring the like-minded people together across the state first to find them. So offering a whole ton of webinars is how we did it. And so that's how we help identify the people and then find these like-minded individuals. But then we can do spin-off local events to that. And so Amy can speak to this more specifically, but we had some workforce webinars, or not workforce webinars, workforce summits. We bring the local stakeholders together to have those sort of conversations, those individuals who are passionately invested in improving workforce development opportunities in their communities. And part of it is connecting those in the business and economic development spaces and spheres with those in, so the K through 12 education systems. And there's different groups around the state that are doing that. Some of it is working with them, and sometimes it's just featuring them and what their work and how they're doing it so that others can see different models of engagement. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Amy?
Yes, so I feel like Matt and I have made a career out of strategic partnerships in the past 2 years. That's what we've lived off of. That's how we really create a lot of the programs that we're currently working on. And when we've engaged with other colleagues that are trying to do something similar, where they're trying to engage followers and constituents and workforce, what we've learned is that they have a difficult time. That creating the relationship isn't the problem. We're all willing to work together, but they have a difficult time continuing to engage those people over and over and over until they truly become engaged partners. And so that's where Matt and I have focused a tremendous amount of our effort, is number one, engaging with those people that, as you referred to, are the candlelight holders. But number two, continuing that engagement over a long term, where we're communicating with them by email, by social media. We're reaching out to them and asking to highlight the programs that they're doing for their own workforce solutions. And that has just continued to steamroll and develop into these amazing partnerships where, when there is something that they're working on, you're the first one that they think of. You're the first one they reach out to. And they've now taken such buy-in into the work that we're doing across the state, because we are inclusive of everyone. Every workforce actor is a part of what we do. That's the goal, is to include as many people as we can, that they're driving hundreds of miles to participate in events that we do, because those connections have become valuable to all of us together. I think that's really been the win that we've experienced over the past 2 years, is developing that long-term relationship and engaging those relationships as we need them.
Amy, it's really great to hear how you guys are using a relationship-driven model to sort of make those connections and improve things for your communities. One thing I would say that I've found personally is that it's really important to balance that with structural planning, so that when there's a handoff, when you, Amy, leave, that relationship doesn't get dropped, right? Building in things like annual workplace readiness skill reviews to make sure that the lists that are being worked on in the classroom align with what is needed in the workforce. These types of structural systems that you can put into place to provide continued contact are a really good counterweight to that, to make sure that you have a balance of both sides. Does anyone have an example of maybe something that they've put into play for regular continued contact, like on a systematic basis, as opposed to the relationship driven? Something that's just on the calendar. Well, I can give a couple of examples for those of you that are looking. One is, like I said, the workplace readiness skill review, doing an annual audit to make sure that what you're prioritizing in the classrooms matches what's needed in the field, is a great one. Pitch competitions, having an annual thing with students where they can present their work or proposals to people from the field, knowing that that is on the agenda and coming at a regular pace means that you have a reason to keep up with those people, even if you're not, if you're new to the position or not comfortable with more of the relationship driven sort of connection. This is a really good structural way to keep in touch with people and do handoffs within the businesses. Third idea that I've used for this type of contact is stakeholder meetings. Putting quarterly stakeholder meetings or biannual stakeholder meetings to hear about, and we treat them to lunch, and basically we just pick their brain and listen to what they want to tell us about who's coming in, what they think, what skills they're pleased with, what they wish they had more from. Just a formative sort of conversation that can allow you to find new places for research and classroom improvement models. So that's 3 or 4 really solid examples to provide structural they're pins, like markers. There's the word I was looking for, structural markers in your calendar for reasons to stay in touch, and having that be position related rather than those that maybe aren't drawn towards or connecting with the relationship driven model, or to counterweight that so that as you do handoffs and things, you have a reason to put people in touch as you're outgoing and things. There's, hey, this is Amy, I'm outgoing. I have a, so-and-so, Joan is going to be taking over for me. I know we have our annual stakeholder meeting in June. You'll get to meet her there. And so it just provides this structure with which to do those handoffs and support that relationship driven model, but also provide a sort of backstop for those that maybe aren't capable time-wise, personality-wise to manage that. Tom, any additions, ideas you have?
I think that you hit on a whole bunch of them. And as you were talking, one of the things that struck me like a lightning bolt here is that I think that the community, the folks that are assembled here, would it be a reasonable ask to say, hey, what do we think about putting together a framework or guidelines for engagement for EWD at the interface of EWD and broader impacts? So just a generic document that we can share among our community to put that together. And if the answer is
resource, not a generic document, and you are forever adding to our workload, but I love the idea.
Hey, that's what my job is. I create work for people. I don't do it myself. I just do it for other people. That's why I'm switching jobs now. I'm just kidding. But this idea of putting a document like that together, I think it would be a valuable thing. But I also think that there's a lot of intellectual power here on this call for people that have the experience to help contribute to that. So maybe as a community, we come together and identify maybe some of the basic principles and guidelines for engaging EWD and BI. And I think if we're willing to work on that together, and not to put the onus on Brianne's shoulder, I'll put my email right in the chat box so you guys can contact me and I'll coordinate that, and then I'll ask Brianne to do it. I'm just kidding.
I went ahead and put my email in there as well for those that want to grab it. We are actually nearing the end of our hour. There's only a couple minutes left before we're supposed to wrap up. So I want to put it back to you guys. Is there anything that now that we've had a little bit of time to loosen up and warm up, anything that you want to hear about, any questions you have, burning ideas you want to share? Now's the time.
I think one concept that's of interest to me is, can we go out there in local communities and find people who are already doing some of this work, and what lessons can we learn from them? I'm stationed out of Kansas City, Missouri. It's split between the state of Kansas and the state of Missouri, but there's already some agencies out there that are doing a lot of this work already. There's a Mid-America Regional Council. They convene the whole spectrum of workforce development actors. There's also more ones that are centered on certain sides of the state line, like the the Northland Education Business Alliance, that aligns those in development and those in business with the education system. And they're doing a lot of good things. So we're trying to position ourselves as a way, how do we collaborate with what they're doing and facilitate what they're doing? And then, use that as a laboratory almost that we can bring out to other communities that aren't doing that. So that's kind of some of my interest, is learning from what's already working, because I'm not looking to build a new model per se, but we can maybe develop, an integrated model looking at what works well in different locations.
Going the other direction from the school to the community, Junior Achievement, FBLA, and DECA have amazing outreach and networks of volunteers that come from the community. Getting a hold of those organizations, learning from them on how they recruit, and then utilizing them as a partner in these processes can be great, because they already have roots in many businesses in your communities that they draw from, and they have a lot of the organizations will actually don't even have to recruit individuals now, because they have relationships and strategic partners with large businesses in the area. So like where I am in Northern Virginia, Boeing Corporation and Hewlett Packard and all these larger companies pay their employees to go out and participate in these programs as judges, as classroom volunteers, it's all sorts of things. And that means that there's somebody inside those businesses coordinating that. And that is your meal ticket when it comes to getting into individual businesses for strategic partnerships. Finding those people and doing that through the existing structures in your community is a really easy way to figure it out.
So I'm going to throw another one in there, and this is something that we did not touch on at all, but I think it's going to be one of the most important concepts to start thinking about for workforce development, and that's engaging our policymakers. How do we engage our policymakers at the local, the state, and the federal level so that we can do the things that we need to? Where does the money come from? Well, a lot of the times the money comes from the coffers of our state and local government, our federal governments. How do we support this for workforce development? I mean, our policymakers are key people in helping us to do what we need to do, what we want to do for workforce development. So engaging our policymakers. I think that's just opening up a can of worms that we won't be able to talk about today. But maybe we can set up a time down the road where we can really dig into that idea of how do we engage policymakers for EWD and BI, because that I think is gonna have to happen sooner or later. Hopefully soon.
I think we've got time for one more question or comment. Anybody else care to share this afternoon? I have to keep Tom on a schedule, otherwise he'll want to talk to you guys all afternoon. I'll keep you here till
I will say that if any of you guys are ever in the St. Paul area in Minnesota, y'all better look me up because there's a rocking good time happening up here, I think.
Just
So
arrived.
y'all, I know. I'm still getting the lay of the land up here. But yeah, if you guys are ever in this area and stuff, you know, throw back a couple of espressos or happy hour drinks. Be great to meet everybody in person.
Offer stands. I'm in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. I'm happy to drive in and meet anybody. You go to the NSF for meetings, or, you know, you've got a conference in the area. Feel free to email me. I'm happy to meet up and chat. I can show you around the area, give you some feedback on restaurants, whatever you need.
I don't
Okay,
mean
so
to
Bryanne,
dominate.
what's that?
Oh, I don't mean to dominate the conversation, but you just spoken a lot of stuff that we're actually doing right now. We could share. And so a quick example of what we're doing to engage our political stakeholders is we're just pretty relentless in using our digital marketing tools, so email marketing, things like that. And so what we started doing over the past 6 months is we're going out and essentially mining the data. We're finding the legislative aids for the states, and we're like moving them into our email marketing campaigns and our newsletters. And so we might not have engaged with them yet, but I have a feeling that over the next 6 months of the year, we're going to become, you know, a recognized source for different programming and different forms of workforce development. So it's kind of, you know, build it slowly model, but I feel like over time it will pay off because we don't have the ability to physically show up on a regular basis into these spaces because we're scattered throughout our state. I think there are digital tools that allow it to build at least that recognition of, you know, a workforce development actor. And so we'll see how it pans out, but that's something that we're building as time goes along. So we're essentially doing data mining in order to build those connections using digital tools as opposed to the in-person, with the hope that they will lead to, you know, in-person engagement and, you know, on the ground contact. So kind of the reverse model of, you know, instead of building the personal connection first, we're building the digital connection, which will hopefully lead to the personal connection.
So my vote is to put more money into research and development in the biological sciences so that we can clone both Matt and Amy. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate all the great discussions, and Brianne for helping to drive a lot of the conversation here. I hope by no means that this is the last time. This is, for all intent and purposes, the first time of many that we can continue conversation about workforce. So we'll figure out how to get you all back together sooner than later.
Yes, thank you all so much. This has been a fun hour.
Oh,